Now you can listen to Wine and Dine Radio while shopping at the grocery store or your neighborhood wine merchant. Wine and Dine Radio can be heard using your wireless internet on your cell phone. You're listening to iWineRadio. iWineRadio is a production of Food Tastes Better with Wine on the web at iWineRadio.com. Hey guys, I thank you for listening to iWineRadio, and we are still the only wine channel on iTunes Radio. If you go look under iTunes Radio icon and scroll down to News and Talk Directory, and it's listed alphabetically, click on that and the stream comes up immediately. iWineRadio.com, where you can find links to individual guests. And if anyone's interested in advertising or becoming an underwriter or sponsor, please contact us at iWineRadio.com. We really, really appreciate your support. The more support we get, the more conversations I can have with fascinating people around the world, including you. If you have a story to tell that you'd like to share on iWine Radio, go to iWineRadio.com and contact us, and we'll go from there.
Hello, I'm Tom Wark. I'm the Executive Director of the Specialty Wine Retailers Association. If you want to learn more about your rights and responsibilities as wine consumers, keep listening to Lynn Crelow-Chamberlain.
It really helps in life to have a law degree. Lawyers are what make things go round. And what we're talking about today is no exception. Joining us today for the second course on Wine and Dine is Tom Wark, Executive Director of the Specialty Wine Retailers Association. And we're talking about this, what's going on in the state of Maryland, that now, a report that was recently released in December of 2012, that on the year and a half of wineries being able to ship their wines from Maryland to their consumers and outside of Maryland to consumers, but not retailers. And, Tom, I understand that in the state of Maryland now there are over 650 wineries who have filed for their license or whatever, their privileged license to be able to ship wine into the state of Maryland. Maryland being right next to D.C., they must drink an awful lot of alcohol, I would think.
Well, first of all, Lynn, it's nice to be on. It's nice to be on your show again. So thank you for having me. With regard to the District of Columbia, the folks who live in the District of Columbia drink more wine per capita than any other state in the country. Number 2 is Nevada, but Nevada is impacted by the fact that you've got so many casinos and so many visitors there. Yeah. So D.C. actually has the highest per capita consumption. I'm not going to say why that would be, but it's the fact of the matter. And Marylanders living close to Maryland, they also do a good job of consuming wine. So when Marylanders were finally allowed to purchase wine from out-of-state wineries, it was a big deal. It took at least 3 years of lobbying by a number of folks, including Maryland consumers, to actually get that law passed. And so the report that you referenced, it's an important report because it's one of the first reports we've ever seen produced anywhere in the country that speaks to the impact of direct-to-consumer shipping on a state that just recently allowed it. And a lot of times when these laws are being discussed, a lot of claims are made. It's people are going to go out of business. Distributors will go out of business. Retailers, will go out of business. Minors will fall into a life of crime because they can't get off wine. And you hear all these different claims, and we don't usually see follow-up reports. And that's what's so important about this new Maryland report from the Maryland Comptroller.
Boy, and indeed, so 3 years of lobbying, and why do you think they chose wineries only to begin with, and not do it full? Just have the whole lump sum of wineries and retailers, so people could basically get anything they wanted.
Yeah, This is not uncommon, Lynn. In the vast majority of states that allow consumers to have wine shipped to them, they're only allowed to buy from out-of-state wineries and not out-of-state retailers. First of all, the main problem with that is when a consumer can only purchase from an out-of-state winery, that means that they can only have domestic wines shipped to them.
Yeah.
Only retailers ship French, German, Austrian, Australian, Spanish, Italian wines. So by only allowing out-of-state wineries to ship in, you essentially are banning consumers from having any imported wines shipped to them. And it's a huge, huge burden. Now, why does that happen? Because they can do it. The vast majority of regulators and the vast majority of lawmakers are influenced tremendously by the power of what we call the middle tier, that is the middleman or the wholesaler. Generally, for the last 20 years, wholesalers who are very politically powerful have opposed all forms of direct-to-consumer shipments. They've been the ones who have been the real roadblock to direct-to-consumer shipping. So, once it becomes clear in any given state, and Maryland is a perfect example, that it's time that the vast majority of people want to allow some form of direct-to-consumer shipping, usually the wholesalers in the states will say, okay, we can support it as long as it doesn't include retailers.
Oh, wow.
And the politicians and the regulators, they're more than happy to accommodate this demand of the wholesalers. And there's a real giddiness on the part of consumers in the state who haven't been able to have wines shipped to them.
Yeah.
And so I don't think the consumers really think deeply about what the implications are of not being able to have imported wines shipped to them as a result of being banned from buying from out-of-state retailers. And so these laws sort of pass through. And that's the real next battle. The enlightened, the far-sighted, and the consumer-oriented politician and regulator will make it will make a commitment to at some point allowing consumers to buy from out-of-state retailers. So that's really the next battle. But as this report indicated, without allowing consumers to buy from out-of-state retailers, their access to the full marketplace of wine is severely reduced.
And as you said, it's almost like 50% reduced, just using the example of the 2011 Wine Spectator Top 100 Wines.
Right, and that's what Maryland Comptroller Peter Franchot did, who really put together a great report. And as part of this report of what's happened since direct shipping has opened up in Maryland, he looked at the availability of wine to Maryland consumers. Now, this is a murky subject. How do you measure the kind of availability that consumers might have in a given state? And so what Comptroller Franchot decided to do was look at the Wine Spectator Top 100 Wines for 2011 and ask the simple question, how many of these 100 wines could Marylanders get their hands on? And what he determined was that as a result of the wines that are already being sold in Maryland retail outlets, and as a result of wines that are being now shipped in to Maryland from American wineries, they have access to 53 of the top 100 wines. However, if Marylanders were able to purchase wine from out-of-state retailers in addition to wineries, they would have had access to 100 of the top 100 wines.
Yes.
So essentially, the law that changed that allowed consumers to buy from out-of-state wineries increased their availability to wine and their access to wine slightly, but not that great. The only way to give consumers true access to the totality of the American wine market is to allow them to purchase from out-of-state retailers in addition to wineries, and that's what this report really highlights.
This is, living in North Carolina, when I first moved here, in 1996, Tom, I never really thought that while I was living here that this would become a reciprocal shipping state. So I do believe in my lifetime that there are things that this will all kind of gel and satisfy the consumer. But you're in charge of the Specialty Wine Retailers Association. I would like to see a day where it's not just wine retailers, but it's retailers who can sell beer and spirits as well. Like, for instance, I was mentioning before, there's no Armagnac brought into the state of North Carolina.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
You're absolutely right. But you know what's another good example, and again it goes back to Maryland, is In Maryland, there's a really poor selection of kosher wines, for example.
Oh, wow.
And the issue of being able to access kosher wines in Maryland actually came up when the direct shipping bill was debated in 2010. And the only way to make a good selection of kosher wines available to the Jewish and Orthodox Jewish community in Maryland is to allow them to buy from out-of-state retailers, because dotted throughout the country there are certain retailers who really specialize in kosher wines, and there are some fantastic kosher wines coming out of France and coming out of Israel and the Golan Heights. But in Maryland, they don't have access to these wines. And as a result of not allowing Marylanders to buy from out-of-state retailers, the Jewish community was unable to put their hands on these kosher wines. And I understand, by the way, that there may be a bill brewing in Maryland that will allow the import of kosher wines from out-of-state retailers, but we'll see how that happens. But back to your point of being able to have access to beer and spirits, particularly artisan beer and artisan spirits. Yeah. I think you're right, Lynn. I think we're going to see an increased call for access to those wines that aren't already offered in a given state. The artisan beer community, the craft beer community is exploding, and their political might is expanding too. And at some point here pretty soon, I think they're going to start asking different states for the ability to ship wine, or rather to ship beer.
To ship beer, yeah.
But now with spirits, there has been an absolute explosion in this country of artisan spirits produced everywhere, and these are fantastic efforts by really dedicated artisan distillers. And I think that the continued increased demand for these small production artisan spirits will also force some regulatory bodies and states to consider whether or not they ought to allow consumers to purchase and have these spirits shipped to them. I certainly hope you're right.
Oh gosh, I think it's absolutely crazy that we could get, so many non-essential items that we can get anywhere if we just pick up a phone or order on the internet.
Mm-hmm.
And
that's absolutely
we can order a BMW from Europe and have it shipped on a boat over to our house. It's just really hypocritical why we can't do this with wine, beer, and spirits.
I tend to agree with you. The primary roadblock is the concern that if you're allowing beer and spirits to be shipped from out of state, and even wine, that minors are going to use this sales channel to get their hands on alcohol. One of the interesting things about this recent report out of Maryland is that they saw little or no increase or concern about about minors in Maryland getting their hands on alcohol via this channel. There were few, if any, reports of such a thing happening. And when this bill was being debated, there were a number of politicians who said, we can't allow this to happen because minors are going to go on the internet, they're going to buy wine, they're going to have it shipped to them, they're going to have parties, they're going to get in their cars, they're going to drive, and they're going to kill themselves. That claim is always made, and it never happens, and apparently, according to this report, it hasn't happened in Maryland.
Wow. Tom Wark, please consider it's an open invitation anytime you'd like to talk about what's going on for the Specialty Wine Retailers Association.
I'll take you up on that.
Okay, thank you. We will have links up for you to learn more.
Thank you, Lynn.
Now you can listen to Wine and Dine Radio while shopping at the grocery store or your neighborhood wine merchant. Wine and Dine Radio can be heard using your wireless internet on your cell phone. You're listening to iWineRadio. iWineRadio is a production of Food Tastes Better with Wine on the web at iWineRadio.com. Hey guys, I thank you for listening to iWineRadio, and we are still the only wine channel on iTunes Radio. If you go look under iTunes radio icon and scroll down to news and talk directory, and it's listed alphabetically, click on that and the stream comes up immediately. iWineRadio.com, where you can find links to individual guests. And if anyone's interested in advertising or becoming an underwriter or sponsor, please contact us at iWineRadio.com. We really, really appreciate your support. The more support we get, the more conversations I can have with fascinating people around the world. including you. If you have a story to tell that you'd like to share on iWine Radio, go to iWineRadio.com and contact us, and we'll go from there.